Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you. The Muslims came back to Medina after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah in what it was now understood that for 10 years they will be at peace and they will try to organize their daily life. And everything was going quite well, except that for the Prophet ﷺ, while he was trying to get alliances with the surrounding tribes, he had a problem with the northern tribes. On the way to Syria, there was problems and it was quite risky. So he wanted to pacify the region and to try to find a way. And what happened at that time is that one tribe, the Banu Murrah, started to attack the Jewish farmers with whom the Prophet ﷺ had an agreement of protection. So in fact, this was clear that it was a declaration of war. So the Prophet ﷺ sent an expedition there just to make things clear that the Prophet ﷺ was not going to let this happen. And he went there, and what happened there was that he had to protect the Jewish tribe. And for us, it's the first teaching of the day. We know that the Prophet ﷺ was also having problem with surrounding Jewish tribes in Medina. We talked about Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qaynuqa. So all these tribes were in fact trying to attack him, and through these stories we can understand that there was a problem between the Muslims and the Jews at that time. But that's not the case. There were problems with Jewish tribes when it came to securing the reality of the Muslim presence in Medina, and also, to be clear, not to betray the agreement. But as to the Prophet ﷺ, he was showing respect towards the Jewish traditions from day one. And here we have that he didn't have to go apparently to secure and to protect, but based on the agreement, he went to protect a Jewish tribe and Jewish farmers against the people who were in Syria trying to attack them. Meaning that, as he said from the beginning in what we call the Medinian constitution, that is Sahifa, that they are part of us. لَهُمْ مَلَنَا وَعَلَيْهِمْ مَا عَلَيْنَا, meaning they are part of our ummah. And if there is an agreement, we stick to the terms of our agreement. So he went there. And if you look at his life, the Prophet ﷺ was always showing respect towards the Jews. Remember when there was a procession and that he stood up and the people said, "Oh, this is a Jew, it's not a Muslim." I say, is it not? Is he not? Is it not a soul that you have to respect, a human being? He was dealing with a young Jew who didn't convert to Islam at the beginning, and he went with him, accompanied him for years, and this was also the way he was showing respect. Remember as well Safiya bint Huway. He was from Banu Nadir and she was a Jew, and what the Prophet ﷺ did was also to be clear that the fact that he married her, but once again, is the way he was dealing with the Jews at that time. So let us be clear on this. If you come back to the Prophet's biography, there is nothing ever that you can justify anti-Semitism or something saying Islam per se is promoting anti-Semitism. That's completely wrong, and we have it through even this story where he went, after having this very powerful presence, he went to protect, farmers and a few farmers there and a small tribe in the north. And we have to get this also right in our understanding of the Prophet biography. There is another story here when it comes to the battles during that time. Usama ibn Zayd was 17 when he was sent to in an army with people who went also to the north. And as he was very young, he was mocked by the enemy. So when did this happen, he was very upset and he wanted to take revenge, to show that he is not so young, that he's ready to kill and he can do it. So a Bedouin who mocked him just ran away from him to protect himself, and Usama was able to catch up with him, and he threw him down. And at the moment he was going to kill him, he said the Shahada, La ilaha illallah. He testified, I bear witness that there is only one God, no God except God. But still he killed him. And when he said this to the people, he came back to the people from Medina. Before coming back to Medina with his people, they said, how could you do this? That's not right. And he was just scared after this. He went back after this to Medina, and he went straight away to see the Prophet ﷺ. And he asked the Prophet, this is what I did. And the Prophet ﷺ was so upset. How could you do this? He said, no, he said it only out of fear. He didn't want to be killed. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him, did you slip his heart open? Are you able to know what was in his heart, his intention to do this? In fact, he was upset, and for a few days he was not very happy, and at the end he forgave Usama. But what was the message here? The message here for us, once again, whatever the situation, whatever the reality, you have no knowledge of the hearts of the people around you. So yes, you can fight when they are attacking you, you have to resist when they are oppressing you, but when you are in a situation and somebody is saying something, so the way, for example, even the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the hypocrites, and he knew that some were plotting and just betraying him, he was very, very cautious with any final judgment. And if you are in such a situation, you have to remember, what did you do that? You did it because of your ego, because he was mocking you. You are not doing it for justice. At the end of the day, you have to check two things. First, you have no knowledge of the secret of the hearts of the people, and you have to just be cautious with the way you deal with them. And second, why are you doing what you are doing? Out of sincere commitment to the message, or is it because your ego was upset and you were in fact dealing through arrogance and transforming this into a sincere commitment to knowledge and to your faith and to what was the reality of your commitment? Now, this is also something that we need to get in our life today, in the way we are judging the people, because this is very, very, very risky and very tricky, not because of who we judge, because of the way it's going to be with us. You know, in our life, it's very easy to judge the people, and you think that your judgment could be detrimental and bad and had bad consequences on the people. It could be the opposite. It could be that your own judgments, this is going to be bad for you. Because who are you? Just to decide to say you are this and you are that. You have to deal with this because your intimate relationship with your ego and your arrogance and the way you can judge people. To judge somebody in a bad way when you don't know, it's coming back to you. It will have a consequence onto you, and we have to be cautious with this. There is also stories here during this time when the Prophet ﷺ was settling in Medina. And we also have to say something about the way he was within his family and with his wives, because what we got from Aisha when she was asked about who was the Prophet ﷺ, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, his character, he was, the translation of the Islamic principles. And what she was saying, كَانَ فِي خِدْمَةِ أَهْلِ, he was serving at home his family. This is the way the Prophet ﷺ was. He sewed his clothes, he repaired his shoes. This is the way he was. He was doing everything except when he was to hear the call for the prayer, he was to leave. But at home, he was serving, he was affectionate. All what we know about the way the Prophet ﷺ was with his wife during Ramadan, Aisha radiallahu anha, he was affectionate, he was attentive, he was serving. This is the way he was. So it's not for us just to go outside and say, okay, I'm going to do da'wah, I'm serving, I'm struggling, and at home you don't serve, you don't care about your wife, about your husband, by the way, and about your children. This is the way the Prophet ﷺ was dealing at home. And also in Medina, there is something that once again we have to remind the people and remember for ourselves, is that it's also a matter of discussion and even argument. Remember that with Aisha, when the Umar's wife was telling him, go and ask your daughter the way she is with the Prophet ﷺ. So it was about discussion, it was about argument. And if Aisha now is understood to be a scholar, a Muslim scholar, it's because she was at home with the Prophet ﷺ, she was listening, he was telling, he was teaching, he was sharing, he was going along with her. So that's also, it's part of the way we have to deal with the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. After 1 year, the Prophet ﷺ went to the lesser pilgrimage, al-Umrah, and everything went fine, even that it was a demonstration of power, because Mecca was freed and they went and they did what they had to do, and Ahl Quraysh, the people of Quraysh, were on the hills looking at what they were doing, and they were impressed by the peaceful way, the very silent and the very dignified way they performed their rituals. So this was per se a victory 1 year later. When he came back, the Prophet ﷺ, after he went there, he heard that an old man came from Mecca, and he was with Ahl Sufa, very humble, very poor, by the way, and he said he was with them, and he liked cats. He was always with cats around him. And the Prophet ﷺ called him the father of the kitten. Who is this guy? Who is this old man? It's Abu Huraira. Abu Huraira, you know, it took a long time for him to become a Muslim. And now he's one of the most reliable sources for us in the hadith. So this is also something that, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, attentive, you know, changing the world, attentive to a poor man. And at the end, this poor man and this humbled man in his life was to be one of our main sources when it comes to our own knowledge as Muslims. Then what also was important in the reality of the conversion is that when the Prophet ﷺ, by the way, this was when he came back from Khaybar. So it was just before going to the pilgrimage, the lesser pilgrimage. When he came back from the lesser pilgrimage, this is another story. There are 3 people who came to him. So it's just the same story that you can get and understand why this has an impact. So coming back from Khaybar, he had Abu Huraira converting to Islam. Coming back from the small pilgrimage, when he came to Medina, arrived to Medina, he heard that 3 people are coming to him. Uthman ibn Talha, Khalid ibn al-Walid, and Amr ibn al-As. These names are known today, but it took almost 20 years for them to come to Islam. Khalid ibn al-Walid was the one who defeated the Muslims in Uhud, and Amr ibn al-As was to be the one who is going to open Egypt. So before, very tough, very powerful, very committed against the Muslims, and after 20 years, they are converting to Islam. Now, what teachings could you get out of this? That we need to get this. Because for us, very often we think that very old Muslims could be better Muslims than new convert. That is not true at all. That you can take, you know, some just heard some verses of the Quran and they converted to Islam. They might be good, but at the end, they also after something which is a very quick conversion, you don't know what is going to happen. Some could have been Muslims for more than 30 years. You don't know the quality, the sincerity of their commitment. And others, it took 7 years or 20 years. Khalid ibn al-Walid, it took him so much time. Abu Hurairah himself. And then at the end, they are very important figures in our history as Muslims. This, for us, it has nothing to do with time. It has nothing to do with logical rationality, the secrets of the heart and the secrets of sincerity. This is God's knowledge, not ours. And once again, to be convinced, it could take time, but you have just to suspend your judgment. Don't be too quick. Let the people take their time. It could be a very long process. Even it could be out of attacking and attacking and attacking. And at the end, you attacked so much that you end up knowing what you are attacking, and then you change, and then your heart could convert. It happened with so many people who today are Muslims, and yesterday they were so much against Islam, that so much against the Muslims, that it's out of this hatred that they learn, they get the knowledge, and now they love. So this also is, these are stories for us to remember with people who are important in our tradition. The Prophet ﷺ was dealing with, conversions and the surrounding reality, as I said, and there was an important expedition in, and it's known in the Islamic tradition, Ma'arakat Mu'tah. Ma'arakat Mu'tah was in the north, and it was the 6th year of after Al-Hijrah, after arriving in Medina. And some tribes were again killing Muslims there. So he decided to send an expedition, very powerful one, with people who were under the authority of Zayd ibn Haritha. Zayd ibn Haritha was a former slave, and he was even understood as being the son of the Prophet ﷺ before the Quran and the revelation came saying, no, it's not your son, it's not Zayd ibn Muhammad. And he was, again, somebody who was respected in the community, but the people were just astonished. How could you just decide that he is going to lead this expedition? And the Prophet ﷺ said, Zayd will be the one leading, and then if he dies, Ja'far, who came back from Abyssinia, will be the leader, and then Abdullah ibn Rawaha will be also the leader. And they send them there. So the Prophet ﷺ sent them, and they went, and he had no news, and he had dreams, and he saw the reality of what happened over there. In fact, Zayd was killed, Ja'far was killed, Abdullah was killed. They were all killed there, and he saw this, and he was so sad that he wept, and it was visible. Even one of the companions asked him, why are you crying? What's the matter? And the Prophet ﷺ talked again about al-Rahmah, talked about love. He was the Prophet ﷺ. He got revelations from God, but he was a human being. And as a model, this sadness, the fact that we need to understand that it was not an easy life with victories, and even if they were there and he was victorious and settling and powerful, they were defeated. The one who helped the Muslims, by the way, over there, who protected them, who succeeded in escaping from this difficult situation, was Khalid ibn al-Walid. And this, once again, you can see just converting to Islam and helping and succeeding. So we have here the power of conversion and sadness with faith and facing trials. The Prophet ﷺ, this is the way he was, and this is what he was spreading around. Be courageous, but remain human in the way you deal. And the wife of Ja'far was so sad, and Zayd was the father of Usama, and this will have an impact in the future decisions that the Prophet ﷺ was going to take. Now, we said that the Prophet ﷺ had a covenant, and Sulh al-Hudaybiyah was quite clear that you cannot attack any of the tribes that are connected to the agreement. And what happened during this time is that people from Banu Bakr attacked the allies of Medina, Banu Kab. And this was against the agreement. This was against the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. So the Prophet ﷺ made it clear that he was going to react. This was not going to happen, and he had to do something about it, because Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, this was an agreement for 10 years. So he asked his people to prepare themselves. From Ahl Quraysh, Abu Sufyan heard what was going on. So he went all the way to Medina to talk to the Prophet ﷺ, to tell him, no, don't react, you know, it was a small incident, nothing is happening. So the Prophet ﷺ was silent. Even the companions were talking to Abu Sufyan, but he understood that something was going to happen. So the Prophet ﷺ asked his people to be prepared. He didn't tell them where they were heading. Even for them, for the companions, say, to go to Mecca now, that's impossible, we can't do this. We are not prepared. So he didn't say. He told them, and this was also the way he was dealing with war, not always telling to his own people what was his intention. So they were prepared and they decided to go, and this was again during the 8th year after Al-Hijrah in 629, and during Ramadan they were starting and they were heading to Mar al-Zahran, and this is what happened. And 10,000 people were with him. So it's quite big, but in order to make it more even powerful, he asked every single man, every single soldier to light a fire. Why? Because a fire normally is between 5 and 10 people. So he's having all these around, say, wow, these are the people coming, and this is quite, it's a great army. So it was a way to scare them, to make them feel that this was not going to happen, or to be easy for them, or they will not be able to resist. And in fact, quite quickly, they understood that this was not possible for them. So Ahl Quraysh and the people of Mecca surrendered without even having a battle, a fight, because they were impressed by the power of the Muslims coming to them. This is called Fath Mecca. They entered Mecca with no resistance, no fight, and this is the way the Prophet ﷺ entered in his own city. So remember, when he left, he was standing up, courageous, and leaving, escaping from the people who were going to, or they wanted to kill him. He came back on his mount and he was prostrating. It was a time of victory. So look at this way he was just showing to the people. I left with courage and I came back surrendering to God, prostrating to Him, because it's not about you, it's not a victory on you, it's the victory of the message, and the message is to respond to God's call. So my victory is in fact my service to God and to the message, and I prostrate. So a sign of humility, courage when you escape, humility when you win. So from here, the Prophet ﷺ entered, went to the Kaaba straight away, made the ablutions, performed 8 cycles, 8 rak'ah in front of the Kaaba, and then he went to do the 7 circumambulations around the Kaaba, and then he went to the idols and he destroyed the idols one by one. And he said the famous verse that we have in the Quran, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا. And say the truth has come and falsehood has perished, for falsehood is bound to perish. These words were just saying, now it's the victory not of me on you, but of the oneness, the Tawheed coming back to the Kaaba and recreating the link with Ibrahim alayhi salam, who built this space for worshipping only one God. So it was once again a Tawheed as coming back home. So when the Prophet ﷺ was coming back, he was bringing with him the essential message that he brought and the revelation brought to him, which was a Tawheed. He gathered all the people of Mecca and he told them, before even talking to them, by the way, he recited the other verse that we know in Surah Al-Hujurat, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إن خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. O people, we created you from a male and a female and made you races and tribes that you may know one another. The best among you in the sight of God is the most righteous. God is all-knowing, well-experienced. So once again, talking to the people, it's beyond the Muslims coming back from Medina, it's beyond this. So you have to get the message that I'm talking to humanity now. So it's a message in time, but beyond history for all of us. And this is why we are dealing with this verse today, even not knowing when it was revealed and in which circumstance. So the Prophet ﷺ gathered, they were all in front of him, and he asked them, what am I going to do with you? What do you think I'm going to do with you? And they said, you are a noble brother, son of a noble brother. This was the answer of the people of Quraysh, the Prophet ﷺ. And what the Prophet ﷺ did when they said this is just to quote again the Quran when he took from the last part of Surah Yusuf alayhi salam, what he said, Yusuf alayhi salam, when his brothers and even the parents came to him. What did he say? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. He said, there is no blame upon you today. God will forgive you. He is the most merciful of the merciful. So he said what Yusuf alayhi said to his brothers, and then he said, اذهبوا أنتم الطلقاء. Go on, you are free. So spreading a message of, with this victory, it's really, truly the day of mercy. I'm just, you can leave. There is nothing is going to happen to you. After more than 20 years altogether, the time in Medina where they were in Mecca when they were oppressed and they had to leave, they had to leave everything and to go there in Mecca and to come back, and they were in between battles and killing people. He can say, prostrating on his mount, coming to pray and to say, you are free. And the people around him understood that the message, that, this way of dealing with them was impressive. It was not something that they were used to. So some of the people were converting, others were not, and he accepted this. There is one person who came to the Prophet ﷺ, and his name was Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. Abu Jahl was the one who was against the Prophet ﷺ. So he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he converted to Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he saw him coming, he said to the companions, don't insult him. Don't talk about his father. Don't say anything about his family. Because he's coming and he's converting. You have no right on his sincerity, no knowledge about his heart, and you have no power and no freedom to insult his own parents, because this can hurt him and you don't have no right to do so. And it comes to the verse of the Quran, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No burdened soul carries the burdens of another. So when somebody is coming to Islam, when he is or she is converting to Islam, you don't talk about his father, his mother, his son, his daughter, whatever, his family. He is only responsible for himself. And with this, we need to get two teachings. The first is, it's not because your father was good that you are going to be good. It's not because your father was bad or your mother or whatever that you are going to be bad. We have to have a relationship with the individual and not to judge by the people surrounding him or her. That's one teaching which we need to get. The second is, very often when somebody converts to Islam, we are very quick, if we don't agree with her or him, to remind him where he is coming from or she is coming from. Oh, he was a Jew. Oh, he was such and such. That's completely wrong. At the moment he or she becomes Muslim, you have only to deal with him. You have to shut up when it comes to the past, shut up when it comes to what you don't know and the heart, and you have to be dignified. To the point that the Prophet ﷺ said about Ikrimah, don't talk about his father, this could hurt him. So he was bad, his father, he killed and he was against us, but now it's not the same person. So we have to be cautious with these kind of judgments, because this again is wrong and it has nothing to do with our tradition. Now, these were some of our stories, and we need to end at that very moment with the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was coming back to the source, coming back home after having been in exile for almost 10 years, 9 years. He was far from, he had to leave. And we need to understand that this story is part of the history of human being. If you start from your heart with God, sometimes you have to go far in the world to come back to your heart. This is what he is telling us about the space around us. He will show us signs in the horizon and it will come back to us. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. That sometimes you have to go far in order to come back to the source. In fact, it was an exile towards the origin, an exile towards the source. He was to go to come back. This is the story all the mystical traditions are talking about, all the spiritual traditions are talking about. But for us as Muslims, at the end of the day, what we understand is that the physical pilgrimage, the physical journey of the Prophet ﷺ, Mecca, Medina, and coming back to the center, is physically the coming back to the center, and the center is Al-Kaaba, Baytullah, the space where you worship God. Spiritually, it is the coming back to his own heart. It's to go there and come back to your center. Your center is your heart. And what you have to do is to have the Kaaba in your heart in order to worship one God. La ilaha illahu. There is no other God but God. And this is the meaning of Tawheed. And the journey is just the journey of any human being. Go, you will come back. That's your life. But even your life in life is Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to God, and to him we will return. Don't forget to tell the people you love that you love them. Life is fragile.